Hello, everyone, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. Hope you guys are doing well today. My name is Brian. I'm here with Allison, and this is Maintaining Frame. I think this is like number 95.
Woohoo!
And we're doing something a little different today. You may have noticed. Some of you might be watching on a different format. Trying to capitalize on the YouTube Shorts format because apparently a lot of people like to watch this stuff on their phones, and therefore they prefer the vertical format. And it kind of makes sense. So yeah, we'll see how well it does. I understand that YouTube. Yeah, actually, here's the thing. There's actually already more people watching on the vertical than the horizontal.
But we control both.
But we do control both. Yes. So.
Welcome to our world.
All right, so what we're going to be looking at today are a couple of tweets, and like the discussion that has wrought, which I think is actually pretty interesting, especially the first one we're going to cover. So, I don't know, do you want to do the things before we get into this?
Okay, yeah, let's do the things. So, if you would like to send us a message at any point throughout the show, if anything twigs your interest, is twigs a good word there? Tickles your interest, you can go to feedthebadger.com/justthetip. We get the full benefit of whatever you send, and you get the full benefit of sending your message not through YouTube's comment enhancement system. That's a bit euphemistic there. You can interpret that in whatever way that you want. So once again, if you want to send us a message, it's at feedthebadger.com/justthetip, and we will read that message out and ponder your great wisdoms. And if you want to support the show, right now we are monthly fundraisers a little ways and off, but you can do so at feedthebadger.com/subscribe, where you can set up a subscription, which will give you access to our Discord, plus our archive of past shows and after shows and events where we dissect storytelling. So if that sounds cool, go to feedthebadger.com/subscribe and check that out. All right, back to you, Brian.
All right, well, I guess we'll talk about the first thing. So this is a tweet. I'm going to just show it right here on the screen. Released by someone named Sean Tuffy. And he tweeted it out and said, "Holy hell, this is unbelievable." And it shows an image. It's more like a graph that says that young male virginity is on the rise. And the study shows the share of young men under age 30 who report zero female sex partners since they turned 18. And you can see here, in 1989, it was something like 7%. And there was kind of like, it goes up and down. I wonder why that is, too. I wonder about the up and down. But you can see that it spikes.
Cycles, maybe?
Yeah, perhaps. And then, around 2000, it was basically steady. Like, there was a pattern that was, pretty, easy to see up until 2008. And apparently something called TARP was enacted, which I don't know if you know what that is. But,
yep.
And then there was a spike that goes way up, and now we're looking at 27% of men of this, study that shows that 27% of these men report zero.
30.
Yeah, men under 30 report zero female sex partners.
So TARP is Troubled Asset Relief Program, and remember when we had the whole too big to fail thing? That's when the government decided that they had to pump money into certain companies because if they went under, apparently the economy would be destroyed. That was the argument, I suppose, or that lots of people would get laid off. So essentially that represents a point in time where the government started to print money and give it to, I guess, the companies that it considered to be indispensable. So it's basically the start in where you could arguably say that the economy becomes much more managed by the government. They're stepping in and making sure that there certain group or certain companies do not fail, even though market pressures would tend to have caused them to fail. So essentially that's what's going on there. And I think there's an argument to be made. I know that there's some comments there saying, well, what does that have to do with the Troubled Asset Relief Program? Well, I mean, also is the start of quantitative easing and low interest rates. But the argument is that that particular economic policy reduced upward mobility. So it reduces the process of creating new concepts, new businesses, innovations, because the money is already going to certain, like when you do that, when you say, well, these people are too big to fail, then that money goes there. It doesn't go anywhere else. Again, and it sort of reduces the rate of turnover with businesses. So new businesses, new ideas can't really be formed. And then you start to see this thing where the people who are successful are the ones who are closest to where the money is being printed. So instead of the people with the ideas, the work ethic, et cetera, and I think you can sort of see that as that kind of philosophy in the games industry and BlackRock. That BlackRock sort of chooses winners and losers based on ideological reasons, and the product declines, the innovation declines, and meritocracies disappear, and a lot of graft and corruption and just a toxic atmosphere of replacing meritocracy with empty flattery and becoming a courtier, essentially. That whole thing starts to move in, if that makes sense, because you're no longer abiding by the market forces, and all the risk is taken out of it. So it's I think that, and I do think that actually would have an effect on men's ability to form families, because you don't see those options anymore for risk takers, for people who have innovative ideas, for somebody who wants to start a small business. So there becomes a lot bigger chasm between the bottom half of society and the top half, or the top 5%. It just gets bigger because the government is choosing to continue to support the big companies that would otherwise have gone under, and all of that investment would have gone somewhere else. And the more they do that, the more they support that top, I call it the fatberg at top, the less it's down, and the less innovation, the more graft, the more people it becomes a suck up culture, and a culture of low risk and lacking innovation, and the less that's available for small businesses. And that gets even worse after the Kufaloof, because of all of the small businesses dying at that point because of all the government intervention and regulation. So it's like this, to me, this makes perfect sense, because if you think about the economy, it's a meritocracy. Men get into the economy, they use their hard work, they use their sense of innovation, because men tend to be risk takers, and they develop merit by either developing ideas or supporting new ideas or whatever else. That's taken away, or that's reduced significantly by the process of making like this kind of stultified, stratified economy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's the whole story.
Oh no, it's not the whole story.
No, I know, but I think that there is a bit of a suggested cause here in this graph when they say TARP enacted and everything changed, and I'm sure that's part of it. But then, I mean, we were poor as a people for most of our life, and maybe virginity wasn't the best way to measure somebody's relationship success historically, since people were mostly virgins until they got married for most of history. But I wonder if it isn't some other factors, some people tried to say it's online porn or social media, but I don't buy that either. But I do think that there is, with a lot of young men, they're reporting zero female sex partners. A lot of it has to do with the fact that I think that there's a lot of women involved with multiple women involved with the same man. So there's a lot of kind of harem style culture that's happening. A product by this top
down economic thing that's going on. The more it's centralized, the more it's top down, the more women are attracted to the men who have access to or are part of the
Yeah.
fatberg, you know.
And when did the Me Too movement start?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
You know, like I mean, go ahead.
Well, oh no, I mean I spoke at length sort of about the economic factors. I didn't mean to imply that those were the only ones. I just think that a man's participation in a meritocracy is a big part of his attractiveness to the opposite sex. As far as
Oh yeah.
like for us, this kind of cooperative meritocracy is the equivalent of a peacock's tail. And when you take it away, it's like cutting off the peacock's tail and saying, "Oh, go attract a peahen." It's gonna be a little difficult without the thing that attracts peahens, which is, you know, for humans, it's this cooperative meritocracy, gaining a social status within it. Okay, so that's what my point is. That is where I see the connection. Of course, that's not the only picture. You know, that's not
yeah
piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that there's I just, you know, when I see we're very quick to basically be like, oh, there's, you know, male virginity is on the rise. What did men do wrong? You know, like how do they deserve this? And I'm of the opinion that, you know, I think that women are making choices, and they are making choices because they are the gatekeepers. And they're not picking most of these men. And I think the Me Too movement and its effects have made it more difficult. Actually, you know what's funny? I don't have it in front of me, but I saw this thing going around, but I saw that you tweeted about it. Bumble. So Bumble is the feminist dating app that basically says, you know, women should take the driver's seat and women should make the first move. And women on Bumble are reporting that making the first move is very difficult, and they're you know, they're not really enjoying it. It's like, it's hard. I might get rejected. Yes, that's true. So yeah, just kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But
I did a tweet of essentially they found on Bumble that women were finding it, what was it, too much work and a burden to initiate. So they're changing Bumble, which I don't know why, because that's Bumble's only selling point, but
it was,
yeah, exactly, was that women initiated, and apparently doing the work of initiating a relationship is too hard for women. And then I had some women in my comments when I said, I basically just said, yeah, this is a thing that happened. So women have discovered that approaching is too much work, and that's basically my entire tweet. I got some pushback from women, and a woman said, oh goodness, it was actually really freaking. This is my tweet. Women discover that making the first move is a lot of work.
Yeah.
And then this is I guess a feminist tweeter who I got into a little bit of an altercation before this over the double standard between how we treat women who say unattractive women who say that men don't treat them well, and unattractive men who say that women don't treat them well. But regardless, so I said, she says, and now it's like any other app with men sending lewd and inappropriate messages or dick pics 7 seconds after matching with you. And I responded, well, complain to the women who thought it was too much work and apparently got it changed.
Yeah, right.
And then she said, or maybe men shouldn't send lewd messages and dick pics to women. They just met because it's gross. And we had a bit of back and forth, and I said, this is the most ironic exchange I've had yet, considering I have to block about 5 accounts a day on here sending unsolicited tit pics. I mean, really, is it that difficult to just... And then someone else pointed out, because I've never been on a dating site. They pointed out that what dating site is she on? Because you're not allowed to send pictures in a lot of them. And if you are, it's after a few messages exchanged. So he suggested that what's really happening with this woman is that she's got her Instagram account in her profile. and they're sending... Okay.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. I didn't know that it's unlikely that she would be getting pictures through a dating app, because I've never been on one. No offense.
No,
I don't think that. Wait, that wouldn't offend anyone, would
I
it?
don't think it's. I don't necessarily recommend it.
Mm.
I got a Super Chow from MGTOW Grows. Gives us $5 and says MGTOW keeps growing by doing absolutely nothing other than watching society tear itself apart.
Mm.
Sunglass smiley face. Thank you for the Super Chow. Go ahead.
And I honestly can't blame. I honestly cannot blame men at this point. I don't think I ever did really, but it's not just the fact that there's all kinds of female only powers in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes and problems when it comes to false accusations, men losing their children. Why divorce is accessible to women, but men's responsibilities to the relationship continue after the presumptive end of the relationship, which incidentally isn't new. They did that in coverture too, in the Victorian era. You as a Victorian husband, if you divorced your wife, which did happen sometimes, and she took another lover, you still had to pay for the household that she was having sex with this guy in. It was, yeah. So this has been a problem for a while. But it's not just that. It's like, why is it that this callous, contemptuous cruelty, like the man versus bear meme, why is it that this is so attractive to women? I mean, I try to explain, well, maybe women are doing this because of this reason, this, perhaps it's this pressure, but it's at this point, it's like, why would you do that? All the women who shared that meme, like, why would you be so pointlessly cruel?
Yeah, well.
Is there a point? Like, you just stop and you say, I'm just being an asshole. Maybe I won't do that. I'm just, this urge that I have to completely demonize half the human race. Maybe I should stow it. Okay, anyway. The man versus bear meme really, it did not make me lose hope in humanity, but it made me lose a lot of hope in women, let me tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's still going on too.
Yeah, I know.
All right. So yeah, some of the replies to this are Kai Dragon Media said on Twitter, it really isn't unbelievable. There's a lot of factors that I've attributed to it. False accusations, constant rejections, abusive relationships. World is way different than 20 years ago. Hell, even 10. I could write a thesis on this. And then somebody said, Sam Vick replied and said, blaming it on men afraid of false accusations is absolutely crazy. Nobody, I mean, what are you saying? Like, they're afraid because it doesn't matter like how frequent it can be. It can be done, and there's no consequences for false accusations. A lot of people are saying it's porn. I don't think that's it. Like I said, you've been able to get porn since the 1970s. I think it's more to do with, like you said, the flattening of meritocracy combined with essentially young men in particular, not getting like the appropriate preparation for the world, and it puts them in a position where they're at a disadvantage, and women are given every advantage that the system can allow, and then they become more discerning about the kind of men they want to associate with, because they want men that are doing better than them, and this just means that they limit themselves, and that's why you have what I think is a growing harem, for a very harem culture around a very small group of men. So
yeah, totally.
Anyway,
down there mentions this, let's see, Tav Reed, many young women are choosing to share the top shelf men with other women rather than dating a man that's on their level. Yep. Top shelf men are out there building harems, and the women are happy about it. Hence, situationships,
yes, which has been it's a common thing you hear about these days. Islamic model: 4 women for each alpha. The other 75% of men are cannon fodder. That's how polygamous is. What? Go ahead.
That's not even accurate to Islamic societies, because most marriages are between one man and one woman.
Yeah, unless you're like, an extremely high,
super poor. Like,
yeah.
Because in Islam, each woman has to have an equal like the same level of household, the same, and I'm pretty sure they each get their own household, so it's it's a pretty expensive proposition. So only a few men can either afford it, or all the women are living in poverty. So it's equally affordable or unaffordable, but not in the middle. So this is possibly even worse. Like this is even worse because, first of all, in an Islamic society or in the usual polygamous society, the man who gains all the females is supporting them and their offspring, and usually he's a big net benefit to the society at large. Either like he's a somebody who can defend territory, or he's an extremely rich merchant, or I don't know, he has the keys to the granary, whatever. There's a reason why society has chosen to reward him. I use that term very loosely, with 4 wives or however many wives, right? What is being rewarded in our society? Like these soft harems. What kind of behavior in men is being rewarded? Like, and again, like there's in most harem societies there is a religious component. So there's controls on the formation of harems or why they come together. There are reasons for it. Usually there's societies with lots of resource competition, so you want to just make sure you can provide for women and protect them, so there's a reason behind that too. And there's a logic to it. Is there a logic to the harems that are being formed in our society, aside from this is an intersection of women having access to men who are far more attractive than them, women being able to support themselves, so they don't have to settle down supposedly with a man, or alternatively, men aren't able to interact with the meritocracy sufficient to gain an attractive position for women, whatever, So what is ultimately being prioritized in this, aside from this kind of gluttonous decadence, like of self, like just licentiousness? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, licentiousness.
Licentiousness. It's just like, and this is what I'm trying to get at. Like when there is polygamy, there's usually a logic to it, and there is a benefit to society, even though I would argue, and the history sort of bears out, that the best societies tend to be monogamous, and strictly monogamous. So there's no polygamy, polygyny at all. But, even in those societies where it is actually practiced, there's a reason for it. There's a reason for it, but there doesn't seem to be one in ours. It's just whatever.
All right, I got another Super Chow. So I'm going to read it really quick from, who is this? Zeranx. He gives us $5 and says, there are more service jobs than manual jobs. Night Motorcyclist has touched on this, and Tucker Carlson discussed this during Women's Month years back. Cut out men's economic viability and you undermine their willingness to try. The turn towards materialism early on certainly didn't help. Combine that with urban living, since that's where most of the high-earning jobs are. This is the outcome. All right, thank you for that, Zeranx. Yeah, definitely something that's not... It's gonna have consequences. And of course, like, the people in the comments, if any man steps up and says, well, the problem is, and it's not like, men just suck, then if they just get bombarded by, like, feminists and like, their male feminist counterparts, saying, well, maybe you just suck, and that's why. Maybe women are just... Like, I saw somebody post, it's like, women are becoming lesbians more now, so they're just not dating men, they're just dating women. So, take that, society, I guess. Like, okay, But, yeah, I mean, it's... I will say this, though. Elon Musk shared this. This is why I thought it was interesting. Elon Musk shared this, and he was like, holy shit, like, this is serious, because he recognizes that, like, in order for humanity to continue, we need humans. So, in order to have humans, all of this, like, other LGBTQ stuff is not really, like let's say it won't end in more humans, so we're just gonna run out of people. I mean, live however you like, but um, that doesn't mean that all things are equal. And he was worried about that, and he talked about it, and people were going back and forth about it. They were discussing it. So I guess I will say that it is prompting conversations about like wanting to get essentially like what should we do about this. So even though there's going to be a lot of hate from the ideologues online, the people that matter are apparently like taking it somewhat seriously. So
yeah,
this is good.
Yeah, I mean, there's another let's see, another tweet talking about how Gary Black says, my theory, too much time on social media, less interaction with women, don't develop adequate dating mating skills, could be greater access to
that's a common opinion that people put out there, because what they want to do is they want to rationalize it really quick and then dismiss it. So they're just like, get up, stop watching porn, perv, get a job. And it's like, well, maybe that's not what it is, But yeah, well, Gary Black, I have it up here too. Just as you were saying it, I was looking at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they got the usual back and forth. I would honestly, and just to build off of what I said before about the connection between that economic policy, TARP, and virginity. This is what we're seeing now is essentially the dismantling of a meritocracy.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're seeing that with BlackRock. We're seeing that with Too Big to Fail. We're seeing that with the TARP, the government basically choosing companies that it won't allow to just disappear due to market forces. So
yeah,
that is the destruction of the meritocracy. So once government chooses winners and losers, it's no longer the market that does. Once BlackRock chooses winners and losers, it's no longer the market. So we see that happening with games.
Yeah.
And the meritocracy disappears because there's nobody to appeal to except a central, like this centralizing force who picks winners and losers. That you might actually look at maybe the Soviet Union as being sort of like that too. No meritocracy, just basically political jockeying to be as close to the people who hold the reins of power as possible.
Yeah.
So that destruction of the meritocracy is represented by this kind of free market system. The ability to build a business, a small business, the ability to capitalize on trends, the ability to develop new ideas and new innovations and then market them and all of this stuff. And then all of the magnet, the wealth that came out of creating services and products that appealed to people and that they wanted to purchase and get, and all the wealth that came out of it. That's sort of, we're at the end of that. Mm-hmm. So in some ways, the meritocracy that men rely on to develop that kind of social status, and what it is a way of developing a pro-social status through cooperation with other men. You either have that or you have this kind of destructive, I am going to physically dominate other men, and that is going to how I'm going to establish my status. I'm going to prove to my community and the women in it that I am the biggest dick on the block, basically. Now that's a way of creating sexual attractiveness, and that's actually been proven with studies that when a man kills another man, his chances to reproduce increase significantly in certain cultures within within the US, within the West, certain subcultures. So that is a way that you can do it, but then there's also the attaining status through cooperation, through pro-social cooperation with other men, which is more like the mercantile kind of thing, or even the soldier versus the warrior, right? So the soldier gains status, but the status he gains is actually a result of discipline and cooperation with other soldiers. I mean, he also kills, but he kills within the context, a political context. Whereas like a gangster, he kills, well, I mean, I guess he kills within the context of the gang, but at the same time as it's not necessarily within a context of justice or politics, but I'm getting away from there. So these have these different means by which men gain sexual attractiveness. And now that we no longer like the meritocracy, the economic meritocracy is stultifying. It's breaking down. It's no longer about merit. It's really about who you know. I mean, it's always sort of been like that too, but there was still always the opportunity for somebody to make it, even if they started from very minimal means, like from poverty or orphan, from being an orphan. You can see that with a lot of the founders of a lot of the companies that form, the bedrock of our society. And but that sort of destruction, that the destruction of the upward mobility of the meritocracy, that destroys men's ability to generate, to become attractive to women. And we either need to revive that, or we need something else. I mean, we might not replace it, but something else, some other way that men can demonstrate this kind of pro-social status seeking and demonstrate their cooperation in such a way that it attracts women again. And I don't think anybody's really talking about that, because it's abstract, I suppose, and it's I think really outside of what people can conceive of. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong. I think you might be wandering off there, Brian. But
No, it's okay. I'm just like making sure everything is running okay, and I'm just sort of checking on stuff, so it's all good. Yeah, I think that you covered it pretty thoroughly. Okay. I don't have much to add.
Let me put it this way. The mouse utopia. Lots of people have talked about the mouse utopia. And if you don't know what the mouse utopia is, essentially a scientist created a living environment for mice in which everything was provided for them. They had ample nesting material, ample nesting areas. They had all the food that they needed, and they were cleaned every day. So there was no need that wasn't provided for them, and basically provided for them by a central service or a central authority, if you will. And what happened is they ended up getting like the society started to break down. There would be these marauding bands of mice that would just attack everything in the common areas. And then there would be these mice that withdrew from any kind of mouse society, and all they did was groom themselves, and they'd stopped even having sex. So there would be these male mice that maybe would socialize with very few other male mice in these isolated enclaves, and they would groom, they would eat, and that's it. And they would not even seek sex. And then there was these single isolated female mice who were basically in the same sort of scenario, and they were defended by some random male mice, so they wouldn't allow anyone to approach them, but no mating was occurring, none whatsoever. And so the entire mouse society deteriorated. And one of the reasons stated, and I think this is really important, was the male mice no longer had a role. Because mice usually in the wild, they have a role in protecting a food source. So protecting and making sure that food source isn't taken over by other mice. They had no role. And because the male mice had no role, the society imploded. Okay? And that's something we should really think about. And again, it descended into violence on one, and isolation and sexlessness where there wasn't violence. All right. Now, what's interesting is that the scientist later created more mouse utopias, and he tried to overcome the loss of the male role, and what he used was creativity for the mice. So he replaced this kind of protecting the resources with being creative. And apparently, from what I've read, he managed to create a mouse utopia by adding creativity that survived the excess of resources, that survived the destruction of the male role, and survived all of survived the social decay that resulted as that resulted from it. So I mean, there might be something like in the title we said how do we stem the tide of the rising tide of male virginity?
How do we stop the rising tide of male virginity? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's a lesson in the Mouse Utopia. And the lesson isn't just, oh, we're all going to die because of this. It's also, well, how do we fix it? And that's one approach, is maybe we need to start thinking about creativity, and thinking about what is the next meritocracy? Like, what is the next way that men demonstrate a way to develop pro-socially, pro-social status? Okay? Because that's the human thing. Humans are very big on pro-sociality. I mean, I know people don't like to I know that lots of people don't think this, but we are actually the most pro-social mammal on the planet. That's why we can stand living in gigantic hives in each other's armpits. Is that gross?
A little bit.
Isn't that true? Like, god damn.
Yeah, sure.
I don't get cities. I need a lot of space. I'm not very pro-social.
Yeah. But we generally are.
Yeah, we generally are. Other than me, like, yeah, most people are pretty pro-social. Which is why, like I said, you can sort of pack us in and we won't gnaw each other's faces off. There are certain aspects to our psychology that's really unique. For example, if you show a chimp a geometric, like essentially they have these little animations where they have these series of geometric shapes, like you'll have a square and a circle and a triangle, and they'll do something like the square stops the triangle from being able to accomplish something, and the circle helps the triangle from being able to accomplish something. And apparently chimpanzees and even dogs can interpret these symbols as characters, and the chimpanzees they will inevitably choose to suck up to the shape that impedes the other shape. Like, so it's the triangle that's struggling. They will suck up to the shape that is the one that's capable of stopping the triangle and willing to do so. And babies, by the time they're 9 months, prefer the shape that assists. So this is completely different. Like, human psychology from 9 months onward is different than supposedly our nearest relatives. And it's different because we prefer pro-social helpers to dominant individuals. I want people to think about that. That's completely unique to us. The only other animal I think that even has the inkling of that is dogs. And then the dogs are split, because if you have a dog that is not in like in a training relationship with a human, they're just sort of a family pet, and they don't do a lot of intensive training, they won't choose the helper shape. They'll choose or they'll just be neutral.
Yeah.
It's dogs that do things like canine agility and other stuff like that. They'll choose the helper shape. They'll understand that and choose the helper shape. So it's interesting to me that this is unique about humans. We're really pro-social. We really prefer people who help to people who have dominance. And I think that's a way forwards for us, is just to look at that kind of pro-social status, the development of status. Okay, I feel like I've gone far afield, and I apologize.
That's all right. I got his Rumble rant. I'm gonna read it really quick.
Sure.
OIC gives us $1 and says, "I'm here to sip coffee and laugh at women." Thank you, OIC. I just didn't want to forget you. I think that's all. Let me just make sure there's no super chats.
So do you have any ideas of how to resolve this rising tide of male virginity?
I think that young men need I agree with the creativity thing, but unfortunately a lot of people are not creative people,
Yeah,
but they want to do something. They want to be of use. They want to have a role. They want to have a mission.
yeah.
And I think I think men need a mission. And the problem is that everything that we, look at as like worthy of pursuit, there is this like push to include women in all of it, and men don't have their own space. And this comes back to what I was saying about men need their own spaces so that they can like, work together, because I think they can do anything. And this would actually make use of people
Even
who
satisfy
are
modern woman.
yeah, well, I mean, but you see, the thing is that can wait is another thing too, right? I think that what it comes down to is that I don't think that men are addicted to porn. I think that one could make an argument that there is a problem with that, but I don't think that's the reason for this problem, because we've always had access to pornographic material. I don't think that really matters. I think that most of the time it's used as a substitute for real human interaction. I think that in most cases men prefer the real thing. So why are they not, successful? It doesn't mean they're not trying. I don't think that we should blame them, but I do think that they need behaviors to model themselves after. They need something to pursue. They need something for themselves. They need to build relationships. I think that men who have good relationships with other men are going to be more successful with women as well. And not that needs to be like a prerequisite, like, if you should like be able to like form brotherhood with men for its own sake, but I think that will be an effect of that, and I don't think that we allow that. I think that whenever men try to gather, it gets disrupted. I think that there's another thing too. I think that we understate how important it is for men and women to develop a kind of let's say a spiritual self, something that helps them to root their reason for being. Because I think that right now we do live in a highly materialist culture, and when I say materialist, I don't mean like, I don't know, like capitalist or anything like that. I mean like where we only seem to really like the earthly things. Like there's nothing, so people don't think about like people who like have like a really earthly view of the world. They think of things like marriage and love and family as obstacles to that, or things that they have to rationalize, or things that they have to like, like fit into whatever it is they're up to. And I think this is especially affecting women, because that's where you get this girl boss thing where it's like, I'm gonna focus on this and this and this. And when you tell them, like if you have kids, there's gonna be a lot of happiness for that, or if you build something with a partner or whatever it is, and they're told like constantly that they don't need that. That's why I thought we were looking at that study, and somebody said something about, it's essentially saying like, well, this is the thing, women are, choosing to like, sleep with the top 1% of guys, and they're willing to put themselves into situationships, and what that tells you is that they're not interested in like, either they're not interested in like building to something like bigger and more like long-term satisfying, or they're doing this as a kind of like, it's like playing the lotto. Like they're trying to sexually compete with other women, and they think if they win that they're going to be the best woman. And it's like a really, really messed up way to view the world, but it seems like that could be the thing. And then when somebody said that, and somebody else responded and said, well, no, actually, 20-something% of women are bi now, or gay, or whatever. And that means they're just not sleeping with men. But you see, the thing about when you say that, there's like an instinct to be like, well, look, I don't want to come across as homophobic, because, like you could live with however you like. But there's another part of it that's like, well, wait a minute. If they're choosing that, then that means it's a choice. So then if it's a choice, then that means that they could have chosen, the opposite. They could have chosen men, but they didn't. And then you ask yourself, why would you do that? Because, what I wouldn't want is for a woman to like have chosen this and think that because everybody told her you should just be bi, it's totally cool, it's totally trendy, this is how you should live, and you could just like, you can mess around with girls, they're better than men anyway, whatever. And this is like what women are told like a lot, right? And then they pursue that, and then they're like 30 and they're like, what have I done? And like, it's because they didn't think about like what's going to be good in the long run. And I think that's when I say we're too materialist, I'm saying that people are only focused on today.
Vanitas.
And yeah, and they're looking at what's going to make me happy now, and they think that what they think will make them happy in the moment is the thing that is also best for them. And what makes you happy is not necessarily what is best for you. So I think that's another thing, is that we
not in the moment, right?
No, and we feed this to women like all the time. This is why you'll have a bunch of women that are talking about how they're living their best life, but they're also more likely to be on antidepressants, because they're trying to make these two things that are contradictory fit together. So I think that is another aspect. I think men need, they young men in particular need to be able to form camaraderie, some brotherhood, fellowship with other men, and they need to help each other. And I think that'll be really good for them. And I know that men can learn from other men and help other men. And also, if men get together and they say, we're gonna do this thing, we're gonna build something, they'll all have like their unique skills they can bring to the table. So yeah, there are men who are very creative. There are men who are not creative at all, but they're really good at following instructions, or maybe they're mechanically inclined or something, right? And so
they organize people well.
Yeah, they're good at organizing, whatever it is. And that is something that I think could be very gratifying, because I think that's what men want. Most men want to feel useful. They want to have purpose. They want a mission. And it doesn't have to come from women. And then I think that's very crucial. But women, they should, what they need is, especially young women, is to be able to tell the difference between what makes you happy and what's good for you. And I think that this is a conflation. So, or
at least what makes you happy in the moment, and what will in long term be better for you.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, I think that whole idea where men support each other, start developing something outside of women, of course it's difficult because it'll always be put under you might end up on an FBI watch list because you're men doing something without women's oversight. But
for sure,
the idea of men building something together, what ends up happening is eventually women will just pop out of the woodwork to go and take a look. I see this, this happens so often, right? Men will get up to something and women will have to go take a look, and if they're toxic women, of course they'll have to be like, oh, that's mine now, and we're gonna break it apart to give to all the other women. Or they may just be interested in what you're doing. There's some women who are just fascinated by things being done.
Yeah, for sure.
And those are the women that probably would be worth keeping around. But so that's a good idea, that men should focus on community with other men, and maybe take the weight off of this particular expectation, since I think a lot of guys are in the same boat right now. And there's a lot more reasons than just economic for why this is happening. And we've been skirting around the elephant in the room, and that is the gigantic sales pitch known as feminism, which sells women on removing men from their lives, essentially, and sells women on regarding men to be a danger to them, which then in turn sells government intervention to protect women from men, and also feminist oversight over organizations, and things like BlackRock getting its financial tendrils into consumer sectors like the games industry.
Yeah,
all of that. So I mean, and when you look at the situation for feminism, it sells a particular attitude between men and women, which is toxic. So it's like men oppress women, which puts men in the category of villain by virtue of their gender identity or their sex identity, which is not something that they can really change unless they disavow identifying with their bodies. It puts women in the category of victim. And what are we seeing? We're seeing a general deterioration in men and women's desire to be men and women. I mean, there's softer, like women, boss bitching and saying, "Oh, I'm gonna act like a man," and they use the most ridiculous, over the top stereotype of what they think a man does. And then there's men who are simply disavowing who they are as men. They're disavowing any positive traits that men have, in order to say that, well, women have all the positive traits. And, so there's these soft responses to this kind of vilification and victimization of both men and women, essentially. So constructing the dynamic, the relationship between men and women, and saying it's toxic, essentially. You have a soft response, which is, I guess you could call it the feminist men, who just say that masculinity and manhood there's no good, it's no good, toxic masculinity, all that stuff. And then the women who do the boss bitching but seem to embrace the toxic masculinity for themselves, whatever was up with that. And then you have the harder rejection of being a man or a woman, which comes with all of the sex hormones and surgery and all of this other stuff. And not all of that can possibly be due to gender dysphoria. Like the rates of gender dysphoria have skyrocketed for whatever reason. And I'm saying that this is all a symptom of making men and women not happy with themselves, which is what feminism does. When it says that men oppress and women are victims. Like, who wants to be a victim? Who wants to be oppressor? Where do you think this urge to get away from sex, taking an identity from your sex, comes from? It's guaranteed to make everybody miserable, and it's very toxic. And once again, I would like to give a challenge to all feminists listening, if you are listening, which, who knows. Can you falsify men oppress women? Because if it's a fact, it's been falsified. Somebody has attempted to falsify it, and it has been proven true. So there's a way to take the statement "men oppress women" and frame it. Dig into what you're actually saying and frame it as a causal statement that can be falsified. Now, you give me that causal statement, because until you do, it's just a belief system. Until you can tell me how that supposed fact can be falsified, it's just a belief, not a fact.
Yep.
Okay, so miss me with the unfalsifiable beliefs. They are optional. So once again, men do not oppress women. They never have. They never did. The end. Let's throw it all out. All of the downstream problems that particular idea brings us. All of the destruction of the relationship between men and women. So the elephant in the room is that has destroyed the relationship between men and women. If it's going to be revived again, it is going to be outside of that. Yeah. Full stop. Like, it's as soon as you start talking about men oppress women, you are part of the problem. You are not part of the solution. You are continuing to perpetuate this toxicity, which is destroying it. So that's one thing to deal with the epidemic of male virginity. And we do have to deal with it, because these are the signs of a society in absolute decay. We are a breeding colony. If we do not breed, we do not exist into the future. Like that human society collapses because it is a breeding colony. That's it. And anybody who is capable of getting men and women together and having kids is going to be the winner. So we're looking at maybe the Amish, they're pretty small, or Muslims, okay? Or some cultures in Africa. Those are going to be our winners, right? Unless we fix this. And we cannot fix this in the context of believing that men oppress women. One or the other. Choose. Societal death, or continuing or challenging this idea that we all, I guess, collectively agreed was true without even putting it to any kind of scientific rigor. Like, that's what's amazing to me, is that we
were primed for it already.
We're just like, yeah, hit me with that shit. But we're not even going to see if we can falsify it. Like, we're not even going to test it. We're not even going to prove it true. We're just going to agree with it, and then just suddenly it's everywhere. And now we're dealing with the crap that falls out from it. And anyway, so, but that's my point. That's one way to fix the issue. That's on a societal level. And then we also have what Brian was talking about, embracing male camaraderie and support and cooperation again. And then I talked about creativity, which I think is really critical. And I think those two actually come together. Yeah. There's a big element to male culture that comes around storytelling. And I don't, that seems to have been lost. somewhere along the way. That's storytelling. And I think that honestly, storytelling is also something that seems to attract women.
Mm-hmm.
It's very odd. Like in the Discord, the general area that's more about like all the stuff that's more men's issues related is got a certain percentage of men. I think 90%, 95. And then in the area that's more about storytelling, the percentage of women is much higher. Strangely enough, I mean, these are very
Yeah.
small groups, but I find it interesting because I think it's women like to be entertained. They don't like to be bored, and storytelling is a big part of that. And we could look back in the past and look back at how our grandfathers and our great grandfathers had, you know, like entire archives of stories that they would trot out, right? And they would regale the family with them. You know, I think that's underestimated as a big part of what makes men attractive to women. And there was a branch of pickup artistry that dealt with what they called neuro-linguistic programming, which the way that pickup artists always approached the things they did was guaranteed to piss off women. No
Yeah.
offense. But it had a kernel of truth. Storytelling is a way of creating resonance. So you create like almost a subconscious rapport when you tell a story, and that creates intimacy as well as entertainment. And that skill has been lost. In generations before, men would tell their sons and their grandsons, all
Oh
these
yeah, for
stories
sure.
and tell them how to tell stories and teach them
Mm-hmm.
how to tell stories, which might have been a huge part of how they developed that kind of rapport, that kind of intimacy with women. But that is gone now. I mean, you can look at Mad Men, even though the actual Mad Men were nothing like they were depicted in Mad Men. But that's all about telling stories. Salesmanship is about telling stories. And, pickup artists will say that a big part of pickup artistry is learning to sell yourself, which is about
Yep.
telling stories, creating that rapport. And that's where I'm also pulling in the creativity. That's something that we could approach. And not just like, oh, men, just do that. Learn, maybe there's a way that you could help young men to redevelop that skill. Just telling stories.
Yeah.
Just framing yourself in ways that are entertaining and enjoyable. That's about packaging, I guess, but also being authentic, because stories are how you display a part of yourself that sometimes you can't just explain just one-to-one with logical statements. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can explain the heart of something as opposed to just the lore, shall we say. All right. So
All
those
right.
are my ideas.
Yeah. All right. So I got Super Chows, 2 of them, and I'm gonna read them really quick. And we're at the hour. Do you say you wanted to just go for an hour this time? Just for the
I'm thinking that
limit.
this is lots of experimentation. I know we have a bit of a chaser too. We could also
Yeah.
look at that
Yeah.
really quickly, but
All right.
yeah, do the Super Chows. I see there's one that's missing
There's
an actual
2.
chow.
Yeah, there's one without a message. So Great Indoors gave us $5. Didn't say anything.
I'll
just
ping him and see.
I'm sure that he'll send something through after.
Yeah.
And Richard Bier gives us $5 and says, "Have you heard about the giant 65 hot?" Oh wait, hold on. I gotta. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'm coming down with a little cold, so. Richard Bier gives us $5 and says, "Have you heard about the giant 65-foot hot dog sculpture in Times Square? Apparently, it is a statement about toxic masculinity. Once per hour, it elevates towards vertical and spews confetti. I recall a patron show about cities with their upward thrusting architecture being a symbol of masculine dominance or something like that." Yeah, we covered that. The whole thing about architecture itself being like toxic masculinity is not it's not new. We've heard about that. If you were a patron, you could have had access to this patron show as well. Perhaps the polygamy is a way to extract wealth from those who the society considers to be having too much wealth, and therefore they are having polygamy administered as a punishment for not sharing their wealth with others enough. Thank you for that. But actually, here's the thing that you probably, I mean, this probably wouldn't surprise you, but these guys who have like a bunch of women in a situationship, they're having sex with these women, and a lot of times they don't give them any money.
Mm. Yeah, well, that's the thing.
So,
what
like,
are we actually
they just
incentivizing?
want to be around or like associated with a guy that's high status. They don't even end up getting his money most of the time unless he marries them, which these guys will never do because they know what the risks are. So,
And why bother? Like,
yeah.
honestly, I mean, if you're in there's no single woman who can compete with 10 women. You know, especially 10 women you don't even have to pay for. Like, you're basically just, yeah, I'll be there on Thursday. I'll pay, you know, every day a week you can screw a new woman. You don't have to pay for them at all. This is what I'm getting at. What are we incentivizing with this? Like, is this actually benefiting any part of society aside from, do women enjoy this? Oh, there was something I was going to say to your statement about spirituality. What I've noticed about spirituality is it tends to pull people away from intrasexual competition. Have you noticed that? Like, it reduces competition between women.
Oh yeah, sure.
And reduces competition between men.
Yeah. Well, I think the purpose of all this stuff is to like not just make, because when I talk about the importance of men like cooperating with other men, I think that one of the effects of this sort of like feminist society is that men not only are seen by women as the enemy or competitor, but they are seen that way by other men as well. So there is like a hostility between men and women and men and men and women and women. You know, there's like women that are feministing right and women that are not, women that are pick-me's. So this is all about creating resentment and distrust, and it's lowering the trust in general in our society. And this is why the bear meme, the man in the woods versus bear thing, is like shocking. Not shocking to me, but like for many people, it's shocking how, you know, how much women embrace it. Is because they have so little faith in men. And it's not based in anything real. They just don't think men love them, and they're mad and they're lashing out. And I think the purpose of that, and this is why I say it's an op and it's fake as hell, it's coming from, you know, a government, ours or some foreign government, is that it works. It successfully makes men angry with women for comparing them to something beneath an animal, and it validates women's, like, you know, fears and insecurities by telling them and reinforcing to them, yes, that thing that you feel, it's legitimate because look at all your girlfriends feel it too. So this is like how it is intended to work. And so if
destructive.
Yeah, and so if men can, like, you know, put that aside and associate themselves with other men that are willing to support them, then this stuff won't affect them as much, and they can just like get on with it. And the women who can't like cope with that, well, I don't know what to do. I mean, I can't help you. But the ones that can, you know, they'll be able to see that and say, you know what, that doesn't apply to my life. I think that's where you could say the spiritual part could come in. So,
well, it's funny because, you know, they say, well, I would prefer a bear, but who are you telling that to? You're telling it to a man. Like,
yeah.
Right there. This just sounds like it's a manipulative Kafka trap. Now, I think maybe some women are doing it because what they really want is, you know, their man to take her in the arms and say, I'll be your attack bear, or some shit like that. I mean, that's probably the most charitable interpretation, is that what they want is an expression of protectiveness from men. But they're doing it in the most toxic possible way.
Yeah.
Could you reduce the toxicity? Could you not be vomiting venom all over men? You know, I know you want to be protected by them, because that's really, I mean, who do women think got women to this point? Do they really think it was bears? Do you think that human history, it was bears who were protecting you from men? Like, think about
women,
that, ladies.
A lot of women don't exist. Like, they exist only in the moment. That's what I mean by like the lack of perspective. You know, all they know is their life. It's maximum solipsism.
This meme is not about logic, in my opinion.
No, it's not.
It is, if she's got a man, she probably just wants him to be like, yeah, I'm the one good dude Your magical vajayjay has made me not be a rapacious bear to you or something. Like I'm the one good dude for you, and I'll defend you from all of the evil other men and some crap like that. And or alternatively, they're just projecting their own anxieties about their lives onto men. Or the fact that ultimately when you're an adult in our society, your safety is your responsibility to a degree, and it doesn't matter if you say, well, don't victim blame, if it doesn't, well, good, great, yeah, but you're still the one who's going to deal with the negative fallout of any mistakes in taking responsibility for your own safety, right? And so that they want to feel protected by men. Paradoxically, that's what that bear man meme is.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some of them are just freaking cruel narcissists who just want to make men feel bad.
That's true too.
But it's just, it is, yeah, don't use this. Like, don't use this. Why don't you just go up to your man and ask him for a hug? Be like, I feel safe in your arms. Give me a hug. You don't have to do this whole bear meme shit, because that's like spewing venom or like throwing a cup of acid in his face and then saying, but don't you still love me? Like, what the fuck? Just, okay, here's the alternative to the bear meme that's same. You're feeling a little bit insecure about the world, ladies. Just go to your male partner and say, hey, I feel safe in your arms. Give me a hug. See if that works better, like, ultimately for you and your relationship than, I think I'm afraid of men and I would choose a bear. Oh, hug me. I can't believe I would choose the bear. I can't believe it saved me from choosing the bear. What the hell?
I don't know. I think it's honestly, I think it's a manipulation, a really easy one. Like, they just tell them, ladies, a lot of other ladies have said they feel safer in the woods with a bear than they do with a man. Yeah. And then they just believe it. It's kind of like, the old Looney Tunes. Okay, Looney Tunes cartoon where it's like duck season, rabbit season, and Bugs Bunny will say it's duck season, and Daffy Duck will say it's rabbit season, and they go back and forth, and then Bugs Bunny will switch it up and say, actually it's rabbit season, and then Daffy will say it's duck season, and then Bugs will say it's rabbit season, and then Daffy said it's duck season, and that's it, and then he gets shot by Elmer Fudd, and it's basically that. Like, women are just told, look, all these women agree. And then the other women, the women who see it, they're just like, well, I have to go along with it because everybody else does, so it must be true. Even if there's no, like, conceivable reason to believe it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's well, it's like I said, it's either it's man season.
Man season. For women in a relationship, it might be an incredibly nasty way of simply saying, oh, I want to be protected.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Who are just like, it's just basically, I don't know, people have to have something to hate on periodically. They just gotta open their bile gland and disgorge it onto something.
Yeah.
And that's something in our society is men.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Shall we take a look at
let's look at the chaser and then we'll wrap it up. So let me see, where is it here? I gotta put it on the screen for you
disgusting.
Guys. Do you want to look at the tweet or the let's
look at the tweet.
We'll just
honestly.
Look at the tweet. Okay.
Yeah,
that's good enough.
Sucked into the website, we're gonna be 2 hours.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. All right. So this is discussing film. It's a post, and it says sex and nudity in movies has decreased by almost 40%. Movies with no sexual content has increased from 20% per year to 50%. So, why is that?
Oh, Matt Jarbo, we need to make America horny again. Well, honestly, I think it's because I was noticing this. Like, we've been doing a lot of, because of, we're doing an analysis of storytelling because I'm writing a book. And there are actually other people in the Discord who are also writing books or short stories or whatever. When we were looking at older... Sorry, I'll get closer here. When we were looking at older, like, movies, there is a lot more sexual tension. I actually saw a tweet by someone who
Wait. When you say sexual tension, you're not talking about nudity per se, though.
No,
Or sexual
just
content.
that kind of sense that men, the desire. Like,
yeah, the old like black and white films,
or
for
even
sure.
up to like the 80s and maybe the early 90s. Like there's just a sense of tension between men and women. Like a sense of, there was a desire there.
Yeah.
And it's honestly, it's not really present so much in current cinema. And I remember looking at this tweet by someone who said that they were watching like I think it was maybe an 80s sitcom, just a sitcom, and they were uncomfortable by how quote unquote sexual it was. No, it's a sitcom, right? But what they mean is that there is a sexual tension between men and women, like a palpable sexual tension, even though nothing sexual is happening. You can feel that these two people are attracted to each other. You don't get that as much anymore, I don't think. I mean, I remember watching this movie which was about this woman who I think was a tennis pro who was having sex with two men or something. There's no sense of sexuality, and it's like it's in your face, but it's like it's sexless sexuality. I don't know how to describe it, but it's like this kind of desireless genital slapping.
Yeah.
The best way to put it, I guess. But the further back you go, you can actually feel that tension. Like you can feel that men and women are attracted to each other. And it feels very, within the context to be appropriate. And that's sort of missing. And there was something that I was going to say about putting sexuality into stories. Because I know that maybe you can speak to this because I know you're a Christian. And maybe more, I don't want to say conservative, but I think there's an aversion to putting sex in stories. But I know that the Bible has a lot of sex, and I think a lot of the importance of sexuality is, it isn't just there for its own sake. It's also there because it's about how you should approach it and what it means and the consequences. And so it's not just sexy times for its own sake. It's about what is appropriate, what's inappropriate, how to approach it. And I think that's something that we shouldn't necessarily cede, because what's happening now is the only sex in stories really is salacious. It's not really about like we're going to hint at the process of developing a relationship between two people, or we're going to depict aspects of that. It's all like, I was watching Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is really bad about this.
Oh,
it's
God.
Like, the sex.
They would just throw in like sex scenes just to like justify it being on HBO. I only watched one season of Game of Thrones. I'm sorry, guys. I know that there's Game of Thrones fans, but I do not get it. Like, I do not get it. I was not happy. But the sex was just kind of like, it was just, I know what you're saying, okay? Like,
yeah.
I don't think that Christianity is anti-sex at all. I think that is a misnomer put out by certain sort of, weird Protestant cults, that have, I'm serious, like there's like a weird, like, some of the Protestant denominations are a bit weird about that. Like they have I don't know, like an approach that I don't think is accurate. I think that being a Christian has more to do with being human, and being human is like understanding all of the aspects of that. I mean, like literally it starts with Adam and Eve. Like that's where it begins, and their children, right? So I think that you can put sex in a story, but it has to serve a purpose. And I think that if you can do it in a way that is like subtle and tasteful, even if you're exploring really dark and controversial territory, I think that that's actually really meaningful. And I give an example of that is I haven't seen this movie in a very long time, but there's a black and white film called Lolita about a guy who was seduced by a younger woman, and you don't see anything, like they don't show anything because it's an old movie, and they had like certain codes they were trying to stick to, but you could tell that there was extreme sexual tension between the man, I forget his name, and Lolita, and you see this in lots of old movies. That's why I said, when they have these like shots of like the the woman staring into the eyes of the man before they kiss, and when the music is swelling and all that. Like, that's sexual tension. You don't have to see it, but like later, like in our, I think that you know, in terms of like how it's presented, I think that it gets like really where it feels exploitative and not like relevant. But I don't mean that in a feminist way. I think the feminism is what killed it, actually. I think the Me Too movement is why like movies don't have any sex in them, or when they do, it's always like from this certain perspective. Like there was a show, I didn't watch it, but there's a show, I think it's called Euphoria or something, and I guess there's a lot of like, you know, degenerate stuff in it, and some of it is sexual. But I haven't really seen anything well done in that regard for a while. You know, like when in the movies that I like, yeah, the movies I enjoy from like, do you remember when Neo and Trinity had sex? I thought that was super awkward. Like I was like really uncomfortable. Do you guys remember that in the Matrix Reloaded? Like it was, but they were supposed to, I mean, it was, I think it was supposed to be natural, but it was just so, like, I don't know, it was just awkward. Like, I felt like I didn't need to see it. Because I think the thing is, no, I'm serious. I think sometimes you don't have to show it in order for us to know it's happening. You know, there was this old 8-bit video game on an 8-bit Nintendo console called Golgo 13. It was based on this manga of this, like, super assassin guy, Golgo 13. Super manly. And at the end of every level, you would play through this level. At the end of every level, he would sleep with a woman. And then you would have your health restored. But the way they showed it was he'd be having a conversation, and then there'd be like a shot outside of the hotel or whatever, and you see the window and the silhouette of her running into his arms, and then the screen would fade. And we would laugh at that every time because it was so funny. But we knew what happened, but we didn't need to see it. So I think that there is a way to do, you know, sexuality without avoiding it, because it is a part of what it is to be human, and it doesn't necessarily have to be tasteful, but I get what you mean when you feel like there's no emotional content. That's what I'm getting at. I think there has to be emotional content. Allison, we dropped. Something happened. I gotta refresh. Hold on, guys. It dropped for a moment. I'm gonna come back in. Rolling out the red carpet. Something happened. I apologize, guys. I'm gonna refresh one more time and see if this does it. Oh my god. What's going on here? Connecting. Riverside's been a little disappointing lately. I'll put this back up on the screen while I wait for this thing to come up, so you guys can see it. I'll look at your comments while I'm waiting for this thing to connect. So, let me see. Super Chow. Maintaining Frame is a cool show for $5. Thank you. Hi, y'all. I really like the Maintaining Frame series. Thanks. You're welcome. Thanks for joining us. Hey, anybody here that's watching from our YouTube short stream? Because I'm curious about how much reach it's getting, and if there's like people who've never heard of us that see it now, because that'd be super cool. Albernator Retro gives a super chat and says for $2 Canadian, that's the new movie with Zendaya. I'm not really sure what you're talking about. Are you talking about Euphoria? Was that a movie? I never saw it, so I'm not really sure. Oh my god, this is like broken, dude. It's broken. Why is it not working? I may have to message Allison here. Hold on. Okay, I'm gonna end the show. Allison says I should just end the show. She says sexlessness in films is basically a symptom of the decline. I'm inclined to agree with that. So I'm sorry for the bullshit. I gotta say, man, I'm not impressed with Riverside right now. I'm just saying, I got my concerns, but I'm gonna end it there. Basically, I think that the decline of the relationship between men and women is why films have become more sexless. Even when they have sex in them, they're kind of like tacked on and like, you know, dry or exploitative, feeling like they're just kind of extra. And there really isn't much passion there. And I think that what's missing is like a sense of romance and passion, and they're just replacing it with just like carnal sex, right? And I don't think it works. So anyway, let us know what you guys think about the show. I'm gonna end the show there. So if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. Please share this video, because sharing is caring. Thank you so much for coming on today's episode of Maintaining Frame, and we'll talk to you all in the next video.
Better than you? I guess I'm going a little further than you are. Yeah, I'm fucking better than you, okay? Much better than you. You are garbage.